Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first meeting of the board in 2021. So far today, the board has already participated in a closed risk management session. We will now move on to a policy workshop and special meeting. Viewers and listeners can access the meeting today by either watching on Comcast channels 234 and 235, UVerse channel 99, or by using the YouTube link on our webpage at palmbeachschools.org. We also offer a listening-only option, which the public can access by calling 561-357-5900 or toll-free at 1-866-930-7015. The meeting ID is 1-561-880-1124 #. We will call the workshop to order at 3:10 p.m. on January 13, 2021. Mrs. Bass, please call the roll.
District 1, Barbara McQuinn.
Here via Zoom.
District 2, Alexandria Ayala.
Here.
District 3, Karen Brill.
Here.
District 4, Erica Whitfield.
Here.
District 5, Frank Barbieri.
Here.
District 6, Marcia Andrews.
Here.
District 7, Deborah Robinson.
Here.
So we have quorum with 7 board members present, assuming the board will vote on a motion to allow Mrs. McQuinn to attend by telephonic means. Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, seconded by Ms. Ayala. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Also joining us on our dais today is Superintendent Dr. Donald Fenoy, General Counsel Sean Bernard, Inspector General Teresa Michael, and Board Clerk Carol Bass. Senior staff members will join us periodically as directed by the Superintendent. This meeting is being transcribed by a closed captioner, so please remember to speak at a reasonable pace. Will everyone please stand for the pledge to be led by our Superintendent?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Superintendent, you want to begin with the workshop?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I'll turn over Policy 8.13 workshop to Dr. Glenda Sheffield.
Good afternoon, board members and Dr. Fenoy. Today's workshop is to provide an overview of the updates that occurred within the Alternative Education Procedural Manual. The changes that will be reviewed today is necessary due to the policies 5.1814, which is zero tolerance, and 5.1817, severe incident assignments, that were updated back in June of 2020. At this time, June Issa, Assistant Superintendent for Student Wellness, and Elaine Hubbard-Williams, Director of Support Services, will provide an overview of the changes that were made to the Alternative Ed Procedurals Manual to align with the noted policies. Ms. Issa.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As Dr. Sheffield just referenced, we are going to be discussing primarily the procedures manual, which is the attachment to policy 8.13. As we do with the student code of conduct, we only make changes to the attachments. The policies themselves stay the same, so that is accurate for this one as well. The policy itself will remain the same, and all changes we're talking about are inside of the procedures manual. This time I'm going to turn it over.
Okay, what we'll discuss today are the changes in the manual, the district's procedures for alternative education assignments, eligibility and exit criteria, description of programs, the Discipline Review Committee, known as DRC, and alternative education assignments. New and revised forms are included in the appendices and in the procedural manual. So just in review, the alternative education sites include Riviera Beach Prep, which is an academic-only placement. Crossroads Academy is a combination site, which includes academic and behavior assignments. South Intensive is purely a behavior site, as well as Turning Points Academy. In addition, we have our DJJ sites, which include Palm Beach Juvenile Corrections, Palm Beach Regional Detention Center, and Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, and Pace Center for Girls. And lastly, we have our youth services, High Ridge, which is a residential treatment center, and Kelly Treatment Center for students. And the type of assignments that are associated with alternative education is chronic behavior, severe incident, interim alternative education setting, IAES, which is only for ESE students, zero tolerance expulsions, academic interventions. And also we'll discuss our enrollment and exit policies and procedures, which include the Discipline Review Committee, the length of assignment in alternative education, the due process procedures, the exit criteria, placement of students from non-district operated schools, as well as students re-entering our school district via youth programs and DJJ programs. So when you look in the Alt Ed manual, the changes that were made under student movement include changes in accordance with School Board Policy 5.1817. The DRC was outlined to be added to this part of the manual. The DRC serves as a conduit for student movement. Students are presented to the DRC for discussion with the necessary evidence. The movement from comprehensive to alternative ed may or may not take place depending on what the DRC has made the decision. The DRC process is for general education students only, and under the student movement, the due process was defined, and also a description of the hearing officers and how the hearings take place were described in this part of the manual. Under the behavior intervention section, there was a name change. It went from traditional behavior intervention, and then it was changed to chronic behavior assignment. There was also a clear definition of chronic and disruptive behavior, and the DRC process was outlined as it relates to chronic behavior assignments. There was no changes in felony suspension. We just aligned the language with the policy 5.187 that was adopted back on June 3rd, 2020. And also we have incident-based intervention. The incident-based intervention is now referred to as severe incident assignment. This was just a name change per policy 5.8175, which was also adopted on June 3rd. This assignment can sometimes require a threat assessment to be completed. And it also defines the length of stay at a school based on the severe incident assignment.
One of the changes that you all had asked, the school board had asked us to look into back when we did the changes in June was with our expulsion policy. And what's outlined in the procedures manual is that expulsions no longer exist in our language. We now have zero tolerance, expellable offenses, and that's outlined in the procedures manual what that looks like. Again, for that specific placement, the Discipline Review Committee's process is outlined. It's a little bit different than the other placements that Ms. Hubbard-Williams was describing. And it also talks about the length of stay for any child that is found to have a zero tolerance expellable offense. The next one is also, we wanted to align the students with disability language with the IEP team's processes. So we have taken the time to define what free and public education is, what the due process under the IEP team looks like. We've looked at also adding the Honig injunction language that previously wasn't in our procedures manual. We defined the extended placement for IAES, the 45-day placements, and we also took time for us to be able to outline what a stay put provision looks like for students with disabilities. Exit criteria was also really fine-tuned within the procedures manual. We took time to maximize the fact that students can only stay in our alternative sites for 2 school years. We did not have that language previously, and we thought it was important for it to be outlined. We also have the minimum academic criteria that is required for exiting for middle and high school students. And also the procedures that the IEP team decision needs to look like for students who are exiting alternative sites that are students with disabilities. That concludes our presentation. If there are any questions?
Questions? Mrs. Whitfield?
I just want to ask about that last item you just put up about the 2 years maximum. It was my understanding that sometimes students ask if they can stay longer at some of our alternative sites. Is that still an option for them?
Yes, that's based on parent requests, and we try to honor that.
Okay, thank
Yes.
you.
Mrs. Andrews?
Thank you. Have you tightened the procedures up so that parents will have more information on when their child has actually been recommended for an alternative site, that you get in touch with them and they have as much time as possible to understand the process and procedure, and nothing happens until they sign off? So where in here with this new process, and how much work have you done to make sure parents don't get lost in this whole process, whole new process?
So we have created training modules in addition to videos for parents, as well as a letter that goes out immediately after the DRC. So parents have an opportunity to contact our department. In addition, we share video with them on next steps so they can, in all 4 languages.
And just to follow up on that, because many times parents may not get the information that their child is in trouble, has been recommended to an alternative site. How is that process flowing now with this new process?
Well, from the school-based site, we won't move a student without parent notification. So it is, or they won't be considered for placement without 6 to 7 weeks of intervention. So parents are in that process. So it would not just be told at the time of the movement. Parents are included in the intervention process at the school site.
And I don't know if I get
Ms.
another
Sanders.
chance. Just to follow up, because in our past, I think we're doing better now, but in the past, many times we would move students because of a recommendation of a school, because of behavior, because we didn't provide enough support, or they're causing some disruption in a classroom. I just want to make sure that, many times it's not about that the student needs alternative ed, but yet and still, in our past history, we would move them on over there because a school might say, this person is too disruptive. So how have we stopped that from happening?
So our department focuses on compliance, and if the school has not done their due diligence, we push back to ensure that the necessary steps were taken and that the support was given to the student while at the school. We don't just arbitrarily say, oh, okay, you can move them without the necessary evidence.
Ms. McQuinn, I don't know if I saw your hand go up or not. Did you have a question?
No, thank you, though.
You're welcome. I can see you better on that screen than I can when you sit at the other end of the dais, actually, so it's great. Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. So before I get into my list of questions, let me first congratulate you on I don't know how many people noticed in the graduation rate report, Royal Palm increased 18 percentage points, Turning Points increased 24 percentage points, and Riviera Beach Prep increased 19.7%. So I'm sorry, I'm gonna applaud you, okay? So that is what alternative ed is supposed to be, like getting children back on the path and, dusting them off, shaking them up, and getting them on the right path again. So congratulations on that. Now, I want to do better. So let me just say, we had, as part of the conversation around the change to develop that disciplinary review committee, we talked about reports to the board, as I recall, right? And so I don't recall seeing any reports yet. I don't recall the frequency that we agreed to. Can you refresh my memory?
Yes, we said monthly for the new year. So you should get one at the end of this month, and moving forward, every month you should get one, and it should be broken out with the necessary demographics. So.
Great.
And just to note, we have, since school has started, we've only had, I think, 3 discipline review committees. Due to the number of students, and the situation that we're in right now, we're not seeing those students and those behaviors, which is a good thing. But just so you know, so the report's coming, but we have only had a few DRCs so far this year.
Okay, and so then, and thank you for that. So can I, add to that request to make sure, if we haven't already thought about it, that we have like an end-of-the-year summary report, and that as part of that report, and I'm not sure if this is where Ms. Andrews was going, but, you know, there were these reports in the past of delays between the decision being made that the student should go to alternative ed and them actually enrolling. And of course, it was presented to me as if that was our procedural problems, right? So as part of that report, can we start adding how many days of instruction were missed but in that transition? So hopefully we'll see it be zero most of the time. Okay. Thank you for that. Now, the issue about students choosing to stay in the alternative ed program, because I know that that happens with some degree of frequency at Riviera Beach Prep. I'm not sure about the other programs, but should that not be in this handbook that is clearly stated?
For parent request?
Yeah.
It does not happen often. Most students that come to Riviera Beach Prep, they enroll there and they stay. It does not require a request. There's no length of stay at the academic site. 99% of the students there, they graduate from there. So unless they came there in like one semester and they want to graduate with their high school. So rarely do we see that from Riviera Beach Prep. So.
Okay. So I think I missed it in here. Is it clear in here that the academic sites or site singular at this point?
I can double check for you and make sure, and I'll send that up to verify.
So if it's not clear, it should be clear, it seems to me.
Okay.
And then, and so before my last comment, and I'm gonna stand on this repeatedly, we need another academic site. We need one in South County. We have too many children that are withering on the vine in our traditional high schools that we could just really pull the data and then offer them another opportunity, right? And hopefully, with Jay Bogus at the leading the charge, we will be providing these young people with certifications and so forth so that they can come out of our high schools and make a living. But there's needs in South County that we're not meeting. And so, I know I've said this a number of times privately. I think I've said it publicly, but I think that it needs to be addressed. And so, Mr. Superintendent, I would like for you, as our true educational leader here, to look at that, because I think that we have opportunities in North County that we don't have in South, and that's unfortunate.
Yes, ma'am. We'll sit with the team and we'll definitely look at some of those things in terms of overall alt ed program, reviews that we talked about a year ago. So.
I'm sorry, can you just say that again, Dr. Fenoy, because I didn't understand.
I'm sorry. I would say, yeah, we definitely need to take time to look at now that we've kind of stabilized post-COVID. Because a year ago, we talked about looking at all of our alternative ed programs and looking where our gaps lie and facilities. So that is still on the table that we talked about a year ago that needs to get done.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Andrews and Mrs. Whitfield.
Thank you, and I'm just really happy to see the improvements that we are doing in alternative ed. But I really worry a lot about the sites for alternative ed. I love Crossroads. It's one of the sites in District 6. They do a great job, and I live close to Turning Points. But I worry because when a child gets in a little situation and they have to go to an alternative site, I think we're losing children to charters and to other places because it's something about how we have marketed ourselves at these sites that parents automatically say, I don't want to put my child there. Now, I see a little difference at Crossroads. I see a lot of people that want to put their children in Crossroads because I'm over there a lot, but I just know at Turning Points, they have a wonderful kitchen there. I've been sitting here for the last few years asking the district, why haven't we done something to that beautiful facility that we built, and we have not really used it to the potential of teaching children some skills when they go there. So when we're talking about children that may have issues that may be at the high academic level or low academic level, how do we keep them motivated so that they can, when they go there, get all their academic needs met, and feel like they're still getting a quality education and getting a chance to participate, so that when they do return back to their home school, they will be, better and not caught up into some other type of situation because it's been so structured there. I mean, is there something new you can tell me that I can see when I go to visit a site now based on this new process that you put in place?
So, as Dr. Robinson stated, we've been doing the work and we've shown tremendous growth within 1 year. Dr. Gatlin has worked closely with me. There was a 1 year growth of 24.9% for their graduation rate. So they are doing the work. And in terms of implementing like a culinary piece, that's a challenge. Because of the type of students, he's concerned about certain things, but I'm sure we're moving in the direction of adding some CTE there as well.
And also the academic piece, because sometimes children that's at the top level academically, once they go there, I would not want to see them be watered down to something that's not going to be motivating for them to want to continue to move. And this is what parents tell me, that they don't want to put their child there because when they came in, they didn't see the kind of rigor that they would like to see for movement of their child. And that's why they end up going to some other type of program.
Yeah, the proof is in the numbers. When we compare ourselves to some of the charters, their numbers don't produce what we do as an alternative ed site. So we have been doing the work, have been charting the course and getting the results at the end. When you look at our growth from 1 to 5 years, it far exceeds that of any charter.
Well, hopefully you're going to market that and tell that to the people when they actually may have to use your services. And lastly, for the Turning Points piece, because I do work a little closer with them too, that they get a summer school program. Many of the children that may be in the alternative sites, I don't know, they need support and assistance too. And I know we had some issues with that school and just making sure those children had access to summer programs. Has that piece been cleared up?
Yes, they had that last year.
Okay.
Mrs. Whitfield?
Thanks. I just kind of going off of what Mrs. Andrews just said about people not wanting to put their children in alternative schools. I was wondering if you see this virtual world we've been in now, is this something that you see as being a benefit to alternative ed going forward? Is this something where people could participate in alternative ed and not go into the buildings, or is this not something that you want people, the children, to come into alternative ed in person?
I'm just looking at the alternative schools and the outcomes that we're seeing now. We do have a decline for alternative students. They need constant motivation, constant prodding. So the virtual world is not the best for them. So
Okay, that's what I was curious about. Thank you.
Ms. Whitfield, let me add, though, I think to one of the board members' questions around if it's a student who's typically, say, a high school student who's taking AP courses but makes a bad mistake, this is when virtual is to their benefit. So now they can, if for whatever reason the family feels, or maybe the school doesn't offer AP Psych at the alternative ed site, well, now you can just go online. And so that's what we need to be designing for, is that sort of alternative for those families that, again, and we have to be 100% honest around this. The challenges for finding those high-end teachers are significant even in our regular education schools. So you have to be a special person to deal with the realities of schools like that. So I envision our distance learning platforms being a tremendous asset to us to make sure we don't lose kids, because you're not going to be able to offer the variety of classes in an all-ed site just because your numbers are so low.
So let me follow up, because I was thinking about following up with you about this later, but if a student does not want to participate in alternative ed, are we allowing them to stay virtually at their school or not? If they were not allowed to remain at their home school, can they stay at the home school virtually, or is that not acceptable?
some students were given the option to work virtually.
Oh.
And when we talk about the students, the high-end students with, we enroll them in FLVS for the high-level courses, because you're not going to find 10 students at the alternative school that's in trigonometry. So we look at their schedule from where they came If we do not have the course on the master board, we do enroll that student via virtual, Edgenuity, or FLVS. So, yes.
And they could be on-site at the alternative location, but taking a virtual class through FLVS?
Yes.
Or one of those? Okay.
Yes, and that's been a plus for us before COVID even started.
Okay. That's great, thank you.
I would just say for the board, I think we have to be clear about something. You know, we're not getting a bunch of kids referred to Alt Ed now because they're just not around, like physically, right? So we have an opportunity now to start thinking differently about, because they're coming back at some point, right? So, but for some families, they still want that choice. So I think, you know, we now have a window to see what could we do different to maximize on, one, the tremendous investment and just capital dollars that the district has spent on distance learning, but two, just the intellectual capital that this team has built, and we can now grow from that. So I think the opportunities to not lose any children is tremendous with the forced innovation of COVID.
Mrs. Andrews, then Ms. McQuinn.
Thank you. One of the things we did a while back, some years ago, and I know we're in COVID now, but we won't be here always, that we took a tour of the 12th floor of the county jail. And I think some of you were with us when we did that. When I look at some of these sites, I do know a lot of them because I've served as your representative for the Juvenile Justice Board for Palm Beach County. And so I've been in a lot of these sites, but I haven't been into them a lot since we've had COVID. I would like to see us, when we get back to our new normal, make sure that, you know, you work something out where we can go see the detention center, the regional detention center, Palm Beach Juvenile Corrections, the 12th floor. I mean, if you don't get a chance to see it, you can read all this all you want to, but you need to at least go and see some of these sites. Once you see the sites, it gives a better understanding of what's on this paper and what's going on and who is in these sites when you start looking at who's been referred. And does it look like the school district of Palm Beach County, or does it look like just certain populations that are housed there? You know what I'm saying? So I do get a chance to see a lot of that, and I think my fellow board members, whenever we get an opportunity, I think we need to go to High Ridge and Kelly Center, you know, and you get a chance to meet all these people when you serve on the Juvenile Justice Board. But I think as a board, we need to do that, especially the 12th floor at the jail.
Thank you.
Mrs. McQuinn.
This is actually a question just somewhat related. When we reference Florida Virtual School, do we no longer have a Palm Beach Virtual?
We do. We use both platforms.
It was, this was a couple of years ago, and I spoke to Mr. Burke about it, that when, I'm going to say a parent, looks for virtual school, it automatically defaults to Florida Virtual. But our district doesn't get money for Florida Virtual. Rather, if they come through Palm Beach Virtual, we do get funded for that. So it doesn't have to be now, but I'm interested in following up on that.
Ms. McQuinn, I will say to you that we have been working very closely with Brad Henry with our Palm Beach Virtual, and we have seen tremendous enrollment with that because we're also working with our schools and guidance counselors and understanding that we do want to make certain that we are utilizing the courses that are within Palm Beach Virtual, to your point, prior to utilizing Florida Virtual. So time allowed, I can get you the data to give you some statistical data from years in regards to the growth of what we're doing with Palm Beach Virtual and the enrollment. But we are making all in efforts and making certain that we're utilizing the courses there before Florida Virtual.
And Ms. McQuinn, it's important to know that your CFO has been very aggressive with us about making sure we capture our kids. It's part of his daily briefings with me. So every avenue to make sure that we're not losing enrollment, Mike is on top of us. He's the gatekeeper.
Thank you.
Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. So students that are re-entering from incarceration or DJJ or youth service, which kind of program do they go to?
So oftentimes, the challenge is the transition piece. So oftentimes we will send them to Riviera Beach Prep just for a transition period. If you've been in a youth facility for 9 to 12 months, sometimes the transition back to a comprehensive campus is a lot for them to take in. So, but generally speaking, they can transition back to their high school. And if the team feels that that's challenging, they will send them to Riviera Beach Prep just as, you know, for one semester, but they can transition right to their high school. They can transition back to their high school if they've been released from a facility. There's nothing saying they have to go to an alt-ed.
Okay. I still find that problematic, but I think that's a fight I had to have with legal. But the other question I have is, do we have school nurses in the alternative ed sites?
Yes, 1 to 2 days per week.
Say it again?
1 to 2 days per week, not every day.
So that's that's an equity issue, I suspect. So I suspect that we might want to put that on our gotta fix this list. So, thank you.
Mrs. Andrews?
Wow, Dr. Robinson, I asked about that a while back. I thought we had improved that, so I'm shocked to hear that that's still a problem with the nurses in the schools, because that came up as we began this whole process. I did work with Mr. Vargas on that. One of the things, since the pandemic, I haven't been able to travel around as much, and Mr. Oswald, you know, you worked with me on it, and it's about the staffs at these alternative schools having to have adequate instructional staff, administrators, to meet the needs of the children. It's a different need at your alternative sites. And hopefully that's been corrected. Special Turning Points had an issue at one time, and I referred that to Mr. Oswald, and some of the others are telling me, you know, when I went to South Intensive, that was one of the things that they were talking about, that they didn't have the allocations that they needed to actually provide the services needed for the children. But that was before the pandemic, you know, 10 months ago. So has that been corrected?
Yes, Mr. Oswald worked closely with us last year, so all of the sites have the necessary positions. Our challenge now is getting people in the positions, but we're pretty much fully staffed.
That's good news. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, board members? Thank you, Mr. Superintendent, for the presentation.
Yes, sir, that's our final workshop for today.
We need a motion to adjourn the workshop. Motion by Mrs. Andrews, seconded by Ms. Whitfield. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We need to call the meeting of the special meeting to order.